It's Ivy Slater, and you're listening to Her Success Story podcast, a show where gutsy businesswomen share their success journey. Hi, this is Ivy Slater, and welcome to today's episode of Her Success Story. And welcome to the series on women leaders in the law, which is always a fantastic series because for me, I get to meet amazing women leaders in the legal space in a variety of ways, and women who are dedicated to making a difference and creating their unique brands. So today I want you to help me welcome Paula M. Jones. She has been practicing since 1999, so she's definitely kind of just sort of new at this, and advising clients on all aspects of international estate law matters of high net worth individuals and business owners. She went out and started her own firm in 2015, which I absolutely, Paula, admire incredibly. She works with clients on, of course, the efficient planning that's needed in regards to U.S. estate and gift taxation, qualified domestic trusts, residency determinations, tax treaty applications. I can go on and on. Paula is an international resource with your estate work. She is also an adjunct professor at Western England University, where she teaches international estate planning, of course. So Paula, welcome and thanks for joining me today on Her Success Story.
Thank you so much, Ivy. I'm really happy to be here.
So I know an enormous amount of estate attorneys. You are the first person I've ever met with the niche in international. So I have to ask the most likely question. How did that end up being where you focused your work? Like, where did the international estate versus just regular estate planning come your way?
Well, it came my way about 1 year after I was practicing in your, let's call it plain vanilla estate law. And a client came in. She was a green card holder and had been in the U.S. for 30 years. And because she was not a citizen, her husband had passed away. And because she was not a citizen, she was looking at a very large federal estate tax bill that took her by surprise, as well as her other advisors, her accountant and the estate attorney that she had initially gone to. And it was because she wasn't a citizen. There are some different rules regarding a marital deduction and the federal estate tax and everything. I was a new attorney, and one of the older partners said to me, go research this and figure out, is there anything we can do for her? And as a new wide-eyed attorney, I thought to myself, oh, he's testing me. He wants to see if I figure out the answer. And I went off and I did my research and I figured out the answer. And along the way, after going back to that partner and talking to him, I realized that no, in fact, he did not know the answer. And he really, really just needed someone to figure it out for him, which I was happy to do. And I kind of dove in. And in fact, I found out the answer. We wound up doing, I won't bore you with the details, but a postmortem QDOT, and shifted some assets in there and got rid of her $400,000 federal estate tax bill down to zero.
Wow.
It was fascinating. Yeah. It was like a puzzle of trying to figure it out. I was intrigued that many of the other advisors, even this, old partner that that I was now working for, didn't know. But what I was also more interested in is that this was a multinational person, right? Someone who has a connection to more than one country. And I myself grew up in a household with a bunch of people that had connections to more than one country. And that was the norm for me.
Okay.
And so something clicked in me and I went, oh, these are my people. I understand them. I am one of them, And so at that point I thought, oh, I would love to just continue doing this and focusing on the international piece of this practice area. And I have been doing that ever since.
Was it difficult finding a mentor that way? Is this such a small area? Because it's usually like estate or family law or business or immigration. We can look at so many different areas, and it's like, I want to find a great firm and I want to find a mentor. It's like, oh, here's a basket full. I'm like saying, how did you find the needle in the haystack?
Right. Well, I didn't, is the short answer. And unfortunately, I just feel like that is the case with most attorneys, is that when we are out of law school, when we are in our first, 2, 5, 10 years of law, we are desperately wishing for a mentor. And most of us are not going to find them. And you know what? It's fine. You just have to dive in. Law school teaches us to find the answer. It doesn't give us the answer. We don't memorize the answer. It teaches us how to find the answer. And so let's do it. You know, I remember, when I graduated, in 1998 from law school. And then everyone was still saying there's no mentorship in law school. We should have required internships. We need to have practical experience. In other countries, such as England, there is no law school. You graduate from college essentially, and then you go get a mentorship or an apprenticeship somewhere, and that's how you become a lawyer. We
Wow.
need to have that in our system. People have been complaining about that many years ago. It hasn't budged one bit, and we still need it. But you know what? It's not there. So if you're lucky enough to find one, great, but it should not deter you for 1 second if you don't find it. You gotta dive in.
So you eventually dove in, started building your brand international with an
Mm-hmm.
international estate flair. How'd you start getting clients? Do you just start traveling country? The first thing is like, okay, do we go to the embassies? Do we go to what international business? Like, okay, I teach some of this stuff. So like my first things comes to mind of, okay, are there international associations that like,
Mm-hmm.
how do you start building books of business? How much do you travel? I have so many things to ask.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's great. And here's what I did. I basically took all of the same avenues that one takes to build a client base.
Okay.
And I just started saying to everybody, I do international estate law. I talked to, for instance, all of the other estate attorneys and said, if you have a client with an international piece, I can work with that client. So to this day, a good chunk of my practice are referrals from domestic estate attorneys from all over the country who say, I am not going to dive in enough into this international stuff, and I know I don't know it. So I am either going to like co-counsel with me, or they're just going to hand over the client, and say, this is not my area. They hand it over. Are there organizations? Absolutely. International Bar Association, and I have other organizations that really focus on the multinational individual. And so I join those organizations. You join a committee,
You
sign up
right.
for.
I was just going to say, Paula, like as you're going into this, you can't just join an organization and think, okay, so I did it. Right? You
Yeah,
have to actually get involved. Hence the
yep,
joining the committee, raising your hand, having the coffees, having some lunches
right.
or dinners or cocktails or whatever it looks like to truly get to know people and to
Yeah.
create the know, like, and trust, no matter what area of business.
Right. Absolutely. So, whatever organization it is, you raise your hand, you sign up for the committee. If there's 10 people on the committee, you're going to get to know those 10 people really, really well. And you can build from there. Some organizations are huge, right? You walk into, when I walk into a local estate planning council meeting, there's 400 people in the room, and I feel overwhelmed. How am I ever going to meet 400 people, and am I ever going to like meet the same person twice at any one of these meetings if there's too many people in the room? That's why you join a committee. You do a little bit of work, you meet the 10 people, you know them really, really well, so that the next time you walk into that room, you're like, I know 10 people in this room and I know them really well, and then your name begins to get around. So
And those
absolutely
10
do that.
people introduce you to each of one or two others, and the 10 becomes 30.
Yep, yep,
And
yep,
that 30 becomes 60 or 90.
yep.
But you're building it slowly and truly by getting to know people. I'll say 1,000 times over, people do business with people.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. I just, went on a trip to London where I work with a lot of London attorneys who send me, they have clients with a US component to them.
Yeah.
They need US counsel. They send that to me. I am on a committee with them. I had dinners with them. I reconnected with them like I do once a year. And they absolutely try to send me business. They are introducing me to other people in their firm, and I'm doing the same with them. And we've really built a great referral relationship there. It's wonderful for business. Yeah.
I love it. I love it. What was the catalyst that caused you to actually start out on your own, to say goodbye to that it truly is a safety net, and believe
Yeah.
that you can do this and build your own firm?
Yeah. So I was 17-ish years in to practice. I was at big firms. If I did it all again, I would do it the same way. No situation is perfect, but I did go into every situation saying, what am I learning? How am I building from this opportunity? And so I dealt with nice, high end, sophisticated, complicated matters. And I believe that, the firms that I worked with exposed me to that. I learned everything I could possibly learn, and I built my own client base along the way. And the wonderful thing about being a lawyer still is that we can leave a firm and take all of our clients with us, you know, and there's a
There
lot
is
of
a
other areas.
foundation there.
Right, right. So I remember early on in my career, someone said to me, they said, look, at the end of the day, your stability in employment as an attorney is your own client base. So
Yeah.
whether you're formally employed by someone else, you better be building your own client base the whole way through. So that when and if you decide to leave,
Greatest piece of advice you ever got.
yeah, absolutely. And I had it, I had my book of business, and I was still afraid. Absolutely. It was something I had wanted to do, essentially because I felt like, okay, look, I know what I'm doing here inside and out. And I want to do it my way. And I know that for my clients and for my life, I want to do it my way. I also knew that I was never going to be in a position of leadership in my firm.
Yeah.
That was never going to happen. When I first walked in to meet the managing partner of a very large firm, because it was like my first week there, and my practice group leader said, go and meet this guy, just say hello, say that, you're new in that department. I did that, and he immediately started telling me some story about his wife and his daughters and how all they really wanted to do was have babies. He actually said that to me. And I said, okay,
Oh,
buddy. Yeah. I said loud and clear, what he's saying to me is, I see you as someone who
you're
anyone who's
here
your
for
gender.
now until you start a family, and then you're right. So you
Exactly.
are not on the trajectory track. You're on the leveling it out track.
Exactly. And he could not have been clearer. And I just thought to myself, well, I thought a few things to myself, one of which was, what a stupid man.
I was going to say something similar, and I was not going to be as polite. I won't be that rude on air.
And I also thought, what an incredible loss for his firm, because
Yeah.
I am a rainmaker. Okay. So stupid man, right? Okay. But I also thought to myself, yep, check, got the message. He's making it clear you're not going anywhere in
Anywhere.
this firm. Okay. No big surprise either. I was not surprised by that. And I thought to myself, yeah, all right. I'm got myself on a 5-year timeline here. And I think I'm done. I think this is my last firm because of guys like this and ladies like that. I mean, hey, it's not just the guys. So I left and started my own firm so that I could reach the ambitious goals that I had always set for my own practice and my firm. I left to surge ahead, you know, and to build and to grow and to continue doing that,
I have to
and I
say,
am
I
doing
happen
that.
to love. I love that you did that. I mean,
Mhm.
years ago, I was said no to so many times. I was said so many times I was classified of women don't do this.
Yeah.
Women don't do this. Women can't do this. You could do this for now. There was a lot of classifications.
Hmm.
And the one thing I've never accepted well in my life personally is when other people classify me without me classifying myself.
Yeah.
And I've always, like you, Paula, have had massive ambitions.
Uh-huh.
And it's like, don't stop my ambitions.
Yeah.
I can
Yeah.
change them. I could do whatever I want, but I'm going to do it my way as long as
Yeah.
I want.
Yep. Yep.
So
Yeah.
I have to bring up. So we're connected through Women in Law.
Hmm.
which is an organization that is focused on women in the legal space with a mission to help women grow and lead their firms. So this is all about women leaders. What drove you and how did you end up getting involved in women in law?
So I first heard about women in law, I believe, from a colleague, and this is really when it started, when it was being formed 10 years ago, something like that,
About
maybe a
that, I
little bit
think.
more.
Yeah, a little, maybe
And
a little more,
I
or
was
maybe a little
involved,
less, something like that.
yeah. I was involved a little while really in kind of some initial meetings and figuring out like what is this organization going to be, but I certainly got involved because I said, yes, we need more of this. From my own personal experience, I knew that there are not the support systems for women in business law or any of the professions like there are for men. A man raises his hand and says, I wants to start a business, and he has 10 other guys automatically giving him advice. Unfortunately, what women experience is 10 people probably trying to talk her out of it, or kind of having to fight through and justify, wanting to do your own thing. And so I wanted to be part of that movement of saying, you know what, if I can't get anywhere in the firms where I've been, I want to create a firm where I do give those opportunities to everybody, not just women, to everybody, so that someone comes in and they have a particular ambition, and maybe my firm can see that through for that person, whatever that looks like. So I wanted to be a part of that movement, and then I stepped away for a little while, probably because I was setting up my own thing, and that was 24/7 for a while. And I circled back a couple of years ago because I'm at a stage in my firm where I am expanding, and I'm going from using contract people to getting full-time employees in the door. And I wanted support with that transition because that feels big to me, and just the logistics of it, of how exactly do I do all that. And so I wanted to get back involved and have support for that. So I've enjoyed the growth pods. I am on a committee. I'm taking my own advice. I'm on the committee for the CLE programming. I'm
Love it.
getting to know people. And I also like meeting younger members, people who are just starting out,
Yeah.
and giving advice on being supportive on their journey as well. Because I want to see people grow their own thing, do their own thing, do it their way, because you know what? Your way is probably exactly the right way.
You know what? Years and years ago, when I was in my upper 20s, I decided I wanted to be the master of my own destiny and I was going to own a business and create my destiny.
Mm-hmm.
It was not immediate, it was not instant. There was a bit of a journey, which is a story for another day. And it's so important when we have a vision to know that we are smart enough and can achieve anything we set our minds to,
Mm-hmm.
and that there's support out there in organizations like Women on Law and other associations we get involved in. And all I could say to everybody listening is lean into that support, ask the questions, play bold, play big, and enjoy the
Mm-hmm.
journey.
Yeah.
Any last tips or pieces of advice for our listeners from your perspective?
I think for newer folks or people who are making the jump to self employment, something that I did that quelled some of my fears, as unfounded as they were, but we still have them. What if the phone stops ringing? What if I never get another
Absolutely.
email again? One, it is absolutely normal for self employed people of any kind to have those fears. But what I did was, I did have a small group of other self employed people that
Love it.
I felt comfortable picking up the phone on a Monday morning when I was feeling dread of, oh my gosh, what if there are no emails? And they would say to me, it is going to be fine. And they just sort of said, like, that's just your panic. That doesn't mean it. It's not real. That's just a fear that you're having. And this will pass. This too shall pass.
Yes, I love that.
And, reach out and do that. I actually wrote myself a letter that said, when things are slow, read this letter. And I just, encouraged myself from all of the advice that I had gotten from self employed people who had been doing it much longer than I had. And I would read that letter. And you know what? I haven't read that. I needed to read that letter for years. So,
I have to tell you, I think that's one of the most brilliant pieces of advice I've ever heard is write yourself a letter. And when you have those doubts, when you have those fears, go back to the vision and belief that you're writing down and know it's there. I love that piece of advice.
yeah, great.
So I'm going to use that as this transition before we hop off today. And that is, I'll always say to listeners, take a deep breath in and identify as you breathe one takeaway from the conversation Paula and I had. For me, it's the letter personally. But whatever that takeaway is, jot it down somewhere and know and make a decision on the piece of action. You stay with her success story and tune into every week. And this is not like, oh my goodness, added bonus, but this is just how I believe and how I work. You stay and you listen weekly and you continue to take one takeaway and you implement one piece of action every week. I promise you, you will be in motion and you will see the fulfillment of your journey because it's not about the giant steps, it's about the baby steps that get us from here to whatever success means for us. Paula, thank you so much for joining me here today.
Thank you. This was really a pleasure.
It was so much fun. Listeners, stay tuned. We'll see you next week on new episodes and more wonderful content with women leaders in the law.